Welcome to World Regions Geography, Chapter 7, Latin America and Caribbean. We're going to talk about the learning outcomes. First of all, we're going to explain the physical origins and social impacts of natural and human-caused disasters, including climate change. We're going to describe the ways in which the Maya, Aztecs, and Incas adapted to environmental challenges and the relevance of their experience today. We're going to identify the sustainability challenges and solutions relating to forests and air in the region. And we're going to summarize the common impacts and legacies of colonialism and describe the history of U.S. intervention, authoritarianism, revolutions, and democratization in the region. We're going to compare the economic policies and impacts of import substitution, structural adjustment programs, and free trade, and the successes and failures of economic development. We describe the history and current distribution of indigenous peoples, languages, and cultures, and their struggles for representation. And we're going to understand the geography and the impacts of the drug trade and international tourism, and identify the main migration streams and their causes, and list the factors promoting urbanization and associated social and environmental problems. So we're going to start off with, first of all, what are we talking about? So Latin America includes all the countries south of the United States. So if you look here, the border right there, everything through here, all the way down to the tip of Tierra del Fuego in Argentina and Colombia, or Chile, that is the very tip of Latin America. But we also include this region through here. So it's basically everything south of the Florida Keys, Havana, the Bahamas, all the way through this arc of islands, the Lesser Antilles and the Greater Antilles. And then you have Hispaniola and Puerto Rico and Jamaica over here. All of those islands are also included. Now, how have humans transformed Latin American landscapes for centuries? Well, the landscapes are vulnerable. What we're looking at here in this picture is terraced landscapes in the Andes. And these were first developed by the Incas. And they terraced the landscapes to grow crops, primarily potatoes, but other crops also, and to be able to raise animals for food. So climate change climate change. Climate is influenced by global wind pressures. And when you look here at this right here, you can see right here description of the types of weather. This right here is the equator, running right through Ecuador and across through Brazil. And this region here, you see all the moisture here, tropical air. Now, all of this region is primarily influenced, this part over here, is primarily influenced by the Atlantic, by the trade winds off the Atlantic. This region along here and up through here is primarily impacted by the Pacific. This right through here where the zero is, through these islands and through right through there, that's the intertropical convergence zone. And what happens is air currents from up here flow this way, and from here flow this way, there. So they converge here along the equator. And when they converge, they move up. They come together and go up, and they bring a lot of moisture with them. That's why you have so much rain along here. That's why it's so wet. It rains almost every day. Now this current here, this Humboldt current, westerly winds impacts this region here, drops a lot of rain in the southern part of Chile, leaves this region right here pretty much a desert. And a lot of this region is dependent upon snow in the Andes. This separation of these two regions, east and west, is because of the high mountain range. And what this mountain range does is it forces the moisture carried from the Pacific to be dropped on this side in the form of rain or snow, and very little of it penetrates over here. So you have fairly warm temperatures over in this region, even though it may be colder on the other side. Rain shadow effect is simply where the mountains, anywhere in here, this region in here, there's mountain ranges run down both sides. They block the moisture, and that keeps that area in there relatively dry. So this region is greatly impacted by trade winds and westerlies. These westerlies bring a lot of moisture. These are the trade winds, flow like this. This is the Humboldt Current. It comes up, circulates here. This is the region where we would have, like, if we're having a El Nino, the surface temperatures here would be relatively warm right through here, through Peru, this region right here, right on that 10 to 20 parallel there. And this altitudinal zonation has to do with the high mountains that run through here. And as you move up the mountains, it becomes different types of climate and different types of plants and different types of animals that are capable of growing in that area. So climate change, what we're looking at here is a La Nina climate impacts. And climate hazards and storms, Hurricane Sandy vulnerability, and El Nino, La Nina, and air pollution. So what you're seeing here is this is December through February. Now in a La Nina, you have cool water over here, and you have warm water piling up here in this region along Asia, and like through the Philippines. So in a La Nina, this is going to get a lot of moisture. A lot of moisture in there. A lot of moisture up here. Cool ocean surface temperatures here, making it dry in the southeast part of the U.S. and extremely wet up in the Pacific Northwest and in this central area. And you also see extremely wet over here and here. Now, when you get into an El Nino, this hot water shifts over here, and it's over here, and with it pulls moisture and heat and drives the storms up into here. That's why we typically have really wet times during El Ninos. So climate change continued. Climate change, shrinking glaciers and snowfields. Serious problem in South America, particularly in communities in the Andes and along Peru, Ecuador, Chile, less so in Argentina, but some parts of Argentina and Paraguay and Uruguay are dependent on water that comes from glaciers and snowfields high in the Andes. And so when these glaciers and snowfields are shrinking, what that means is there's going to be less water flowing out of the mountains. And that means less water in the rivers, less water for agriculture, less water for people to drink. Think of California when we have our dry years, but thinking of that being every year. I mean, we are basically in the same situation. If we don't have snow and rain, the summer is very dry, very hot, lots of fires, difficult for agriculture, difficult for large cities. Climate change, another thing that's impacting it is Amazon deforestation. That's the clearing of land for agricultural purposes in the Amazon River Valley. Now, the Brazilian government is trying to reverse that, trying to control that. But, you know, a few years ago, they were clearing an area the size of North Dakota for one farm to grow soybeans. The problem with any tropical area, typically the soils themselves are very, very vulnerable. What we mean by that is simply this, is that the soils are not very deep. They are reliant on constant depositing of detritus, in other words, of leaves and plant material that decay. That's what makes the soil fertile. But when you remove that jungle, that deforestation process, when you remove that, then your only option is to use excessive amounts of fertilizers in order to do that. And eventually that will create its own problems in killing off rivers and oceans. And you can look at the mouth of the Mississippi River for a dead zone, and that is basically brought about because of all the fertilizers used in the Midwest part of the United States, growing corn and grains that flow down the Mississippi River, Missouri and Mississippi River, and the Ohio River, and out into the Gulf, and causes algae blooms which deplete all the oxygen and kill off basically all the fish. Vulnerability of Caribbean islands, extremely vulnerable to storms. So as we have more higher impact storms, those islands, particularly low-lying islands, are extremely vulnerable, not only to sea level rise in islands like the Bahamas and the Caymans, but also storms destroying everything. Now, the international carbon markets, the RED, R-E-D, the RED is the regional programs, particularly in Europe, to pay farmers or pay countries or people in regions such as Latin America and the Caribbean to reduce carbon in order to offset what's being produced by the large carbon producing countries like in Europe. So they pay to buy credits from the low producing so that they can have their same market. And this, in theory, encourages people to do more environmentally friendly farming and activities in areas like Latin America and the Caribbean.